Good morning, everyone. Apologize for the late start here, and we need to be done at 9 o'clock, so there's a lot of things going on right now. Anyway, welcome to Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, January 15th, 2026. And before we get started here, I'd like to do it starting with my left.
Bradley Showman, Office of Legislative Counsel.
And Mark Higley, representative from the Orleans Lamoille District.
Rob Plunkett, Senator, Bennington District.
Carol Odie, Representative, Barney North Bend, Burlington.
Seth Glitz, representative from Randolph.
Seth Gomez, Bennington Senate District.
Good morning. Senator David Weeks, representing Rutland County.
Representative Trevor Squirrel, Representative Underhill and Jericho, and Lindsay.
Lindsay Schreier, Committee Assistant.
Damian Leonard, Legislative Counsel.
Okay, thank you. First up are the minutes from January 8th. Do I have a motion to approve?
Removed.
And we have a motion to approve the minutes from January 8th. Any comments, changes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, first up on the agenda is Rule 25B35, rule regarding installation, construction, operation, and aggregation of energy storage facilities. We heard the rule last week, and there's questions regarding firefighter education and some issues around maybe some guidance. And we asked you to present us with some additional information. I know that Representative Higley has a particular interest in this.
Correct.
So is there anything you want to say before?
No, I just want to have them set first. If it's up to you.
No, that's fine.
Great. We have pulled together a memo sort of addressing all the requirements with regard to fire safety in the rule.
That memo?
Yes, it was uploaded, and it should be included in the packet as well.
Okay.
And granted, we got you the memo yesterday, so.
Got it.
To begin with, we think if it's helpful, I can walk through the memo.
Sure.
That works. Okay. To begin with, we think the rule addresses fire safety consistent with the requirements under 248 B4, 248U, and 8011. So the memo kind of walks through the specific requirements with regard to fire safety. So under the rule, we've established a simplified process for two types of storage facilities. And under the simplified process to get a Section 248 certificate of public good, some requirements have been waived, which the commission was granted authority under Section 8011. So, but just to be clear, with regard to fire safety and public safety in general, the commission hasn't waived any requirements under Section 248. So facilities are still required to provide evidence addressing public safety and fire safety under the process. Towns and the Division of Fire Safety are provided notice of the petition for the 248. They're also provided an opportunity to comment on the petition and raise any. They're allowed to raise issues, and the commission can call a hearing if significant concerns are raised, and go to a full 248 process. So also, as I think, as I mentioned, under that process, applicants must submit evidence addressing fire safety. Sure. Oh, and then finally, as part of the certificate of public good that's issued for the facility, so before construction can start, the CPG holder must notify local emergency responders that the energy storage facility is in that locality and provide emergency response training upon request. Also, under the rule, the commission was given authority to also set up specific safety standards that are applicable to all energy storage facilities. And the standards, there's a couple of standards that govern fire safety. One is the National Fire Protection Association standard, and under the rule, all storage facilities must comply with that. And then also for facilities in public buildings, the Division of Fire Safety's Building Safety Code also is applicable to these facilities. I also wanted to note that when we developed the rule, we did go through a fair amount of extensive comment process and worked with both the Division of Fire Safety and the Department of Public Service when we developed these standards. And the standards that we have specified in the rule are basically their recommendations on what should apply. The memo also just provides a little more detailed summary on what kinds of things apply under the fire safety standard under NFPA 855. So I probably don't need to walk through that standard.
So you all set?
Yeah.
So again, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that. I'm sorry that I haven't had an opportunity yet. You just got this memo. But I guess what I'd like to say is I've done a lot of outreach since last week, and I want to give folks a feel of what's actually happening on the ground. I talked to the fire chief in Troy where this facility went into place. And again, this might be a small town issue, but it's really important that a lot of towns don't have the ability sometimes when they get a letter or a note from whomever, whether it's, through an Act 248 process or whatever. But I can tell you that what he said was, it was pretty much after the project was in place that somebody basically through Vermont Electric Co-op and then Green Mountain Power handed him some phone numbers to call to try and set up some protocol around that. He had set up his protocol in regards to it's at a three-way intersection. So they're going to block off all the roadways. There's a neighbor that's close by. They have to evacuate the neighbor. They're not going to put a drop of water on it. His biggest concern was, of course, forest fires, especially, after last year's real hot summer. So it sounds to me like, he pretty much was totally involved. Now, when it comes to the Commissioner of Fire Safety, I talked with Mike DeRoshi. He told me that particular facility, they wouldn't really have any authority because, again, it's not in a building. It goes directly into the grid. So that's a concern as well. I know that under 9.306 requiring the CPG, and you might have mentioned this too, but the CPG holder must notify local emergency responders of the energy storage facility and provide emergency response training upon request. So, maybe that's where things need to be tightened up a little bit more as well. I can follow up with calling he used to be the fire chief in Lowell, next town down, or two towns down, wasn't aware of any of this. And so, there's a mutual aid issue here. And he said that he would certainly reach out and find out, because if his folks showed up there first, they may put some water on it. I mean, it's, I know there is the fire chief in Troy did say that there's yearly training around battery storage facilities and all that sort of stuff. But But again, I think, and again, I got to go back to the small town. I talked to the town clerk. They said they didn't really have a lot of input. It didn't go through zoning. It sounds like Vermont Electric Co-op said that there was a meeting with the select board. Again, I just think there's, and maybe the chair and other committee members can help me out with this process, but to me, there's a real safety issue there. And I know, and maybe you're familiar with it too. I researched a little bit about the EPA now through their BESS, battery energy storage systems, are requesting, I don't know if it's a mandate now or not, but upgrades to concerns around the fire hazards, toxic emissions, and emergency response challenges. So I guess in talking with all the folks that I did, public safety, actually, the commissioner, in case, something has to happen there, Vermont Electric Co-op, Green Mountain Power, Mike DeRoshi, the town, everybody's, wanting to work together to try to tighten this up in regards to what's actually required here. And it's a real concern. There's that major fire, 7-day fire, they call it out in California, that kind of triggered all this to come up with. And to me, what I see in the rule isn't really responsive enough to provide the towns with the safety that they need for their firefighters and the residents. So
If I could just respond really quickly. I mean, the 248 process.
By yourself.
Oh, excuse me. My name is Jake Marin. I'm counsel for the Public Utility Commission. Under the Section 248 process, the town gets notice 180 days before the application is filed. And then they get notice again once the application is filed, where they have an opportunity to submit comments within the 30-day period before a CPG decision is rendered. Or the commission decides to hold a hearing, in which case the CPG would take even longer to issue. So there is a fair amount of sort of opportunity for the town to raise issues or just to get in touch with the players that, that they'll be identified who the applicant is, who the landowner is, all that information will be presented to them. Also a description of the facility. And then as you've said, then they have the opportunity to, if they want to request training or if they have concerns about a particular building that may be nearby the proposed facility or anything like that, they can raise those issues. And the commission certainly would consider them when deciding whether there need to be conditions about coordination amongst different fire departments, or if there needs to be additional safety protocol adopted for that facility. But, the information presented to the commission during this 3-year rulemaking was that, the vast majority of these facilities are very safe. Don't present significant issues to public safety or the environment. And so, and state law has directed the commission to simplify this process to the extent practicable. So, I mean, we take very seriously the issues that you've raised, but I mean, we also very much feel like this rule provides a strong opportunity for the towns to raise any concerns, and the commission has full authority to tailor the requirements for each facility so that they are appropriately safe. But again, for the vast majority of facilities, there really isn't a significant safety issue.
We're talking about.
In the law or in rule, what happens if we do have a problem with one of these facilities, a one-off, and it totally exhausts the fire budget of the town where it's located or the surrounding towns? Who pays the bill?
With respect to the local budgets, I can't speak to that. The commission doesn't have any jurisdiction over that sort of thing.
No, just when you specify tailoring the response to the individual project or whatever, I think that's great, but I don't see that happened here, and I think it probably should have. I mean, it's right on the intersection of 3 roads. And my understanding is these things are good until they're not, and that's, I mean, again, I said it last week, there's testimony going on in Massachusetts where these fire chiefs are saying, I don't want them in my town. I'm not putting my firefighters at risk. I'm not putting the citizens at risk. And, there is some safety measures around it. They've been toned out twice to the project. Once during somebody set the porta potty on fire during construction. Second time was, there was an alarm that was going off. I guess it's very loud and the homeowner nearby called 911 and it was a false alarm, but again, it sounds to me like it's going to be an issue.
The representative raises some issues. I'm not sure what the remedy is or a suggested remedy. I see that Ellen is on and she's the subject matter expert here. I wonder if she has any thoughts or comments regarding this discussion right now.
No. No, Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. I don't have anything else to add.
Okay.
I guess, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes.
So you said that this process has been in the works for 3 years. What's the actual deadline for the rule to
What's the
be?
adoption?
You know,
Well, there is no statutory deadline that we have to meet, but there is a 7-month clock on this rulemaking. When did we file with the Secretary of State the first time?
Well, there would be an adoption deadline, right?
I believe it was in October, yeah, it was filed. October or September, late September?
Lindsay, do you have that?
I have it. I have it up.
I'm sorry.
The adoption deadline for this rule is May 12th. The 45-day review period for Lcar ends on January 19th.
Okay. I'd like to have a little bit more conversation around this, okay? So, and knowing that it's not something that has to go into effect, what we'll need from you is an extension on our 45-day, okay? Because it expires on the 19th. It won't impact your adoption timeframe.
I'll speak to the commission.
What's that?
I'll speak to the commission and ask for the extension.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. And why don't you give us a couple weeks on that? And what we'll do is I'll get folks together and we'll chat about this and see what next steps might be, rather than make a decision right now. You comfortable with that?
You're on that side of the table, we're on this side.
I mean, you know,
You're okay with us taking a little bit more time?
Section-
Absolutely.
Section 248 is still in effect and
That's correct.
people can still come to us for a permit.
Yeah,
So the rule doesn't change.
So if you get us an extension, that'd be great. And then we'll be in touch with you about next steps, okay?
absolutely.
Committee, okay with that?
thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Rule 25, E31, best management practices for the use of neonic treated particle seeds and neonic pesticides. And we have, I guess we're starting with, is it Zachary?
We'll make some changes just in terms of time, you know.
Okay, we have Steve,
Steve.
all yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Steve Dwinell. I'm the Director of the Division of Plant Industry for the Agency of Agricultural Food and Markets.
Morning, everyone. Steve Collier, and General Counsel for the agency.
And what we thought we'd do, just in the interest of time, is just spend a couple of minutes talking about how the rule was developed, the process it went through, and why it's in the form it's at. And then Steve will talk about I guess, one of the central issues, which is the shall, should.
How you were doing.
Okay. Yeah. So just briefly, this rule was developed in accordance with the section of the statute, 6 VSA, get the quick number here. 1105 AC1, I guess is what it is. And that portion of the statute directs the agency to adopt by rule BMPs for the use of neonicotinoid treated seeds, and that was amended in 2024 to include the use of neonicotinoid pesticides. So starting in late 2022, all the way through 2023, back up a minute, we were asked to consider, there were 7 factors we had to take into consideration in the development of the rule. So in late 2022 through 2023, we discussed those 7 factors with the Agricultural Innovation Board. Spent a lot of time, heard from subject matter experts, got presentations, had discussions, at the end of which the board adopted a set of recommendations to the secretary. By consensus, it was unanimous to support additional research on the aspects of the use of the seed, including non-target dust movement, effectiveness of seed lubricant alternatives, the impact of various cropping practices, and to support research and development of alternatives. Also, second group of recommendations was to support and promote education and training of farmers who are using the treated seed, develop IPM guidance for the growers, develop information on the potential risk to pollinators and making decisions, and to ensure the ensure that growers receive updates on relevant research. And then a third part of that, which didn't become part of the rule, but is something we're doing, which is support and promote efforts to increase pollinator habitat without impacting agricultural production. So those were the consensus recommendations from the Agricultural Innovation Board to the Secretary for the development of the best management practices. And while we were going through that process, we were also collecting information on best management practices that have been developed in other states and various organizations like the American Seed Trade Association, folks like that, and compiled those, presented those to AIB. We put together all that information as a set of draft BMPs, presented that to the board in early 2024. And when it was presented, we specifically noted that these were recommended best practices, not intended to be enforcement standards. And that was that was an element of discussion at that when we presented that information. So then we also presented that to the committees in that form, both in 2024. Well, in 2024, then after the Act 182 was passed, we had to go back and add the section on BMPs for use in the neonicotinoid pesticides. Added that, went back to AIB, presented them again in the same format as recommended practices, presented all that again to the committees as recommended practices, and then proceeded to rulemaking, which is where we're at now. So that's just sort of a encapsulation of how we did it. And the reason for making them recommended practices, first of all, general understanding of best management practices is that they are recommended practices to be used when practical and reasonable. They're not enforceable standards. It's in general, in agriculture, when you describe a best management practice, you describe a set of practices that are good ideas to use, and you should use if you can, and you need to be educated about them, and you have research to support them, but they're not absolute requirements that you do them or else. Okay, so that's just the general understanding of best management practices. But the other reason for doing it in this form is to allow the research to be done under Vermont conditions to develop the practices that are the most effective and appropriate for Vermont, which is ongoing right now. We're supporting research at the University of Vermont. It's entering its 3rd year now, and we'll have that information to use to provide information to farmers on the best practices to use. And so that's why we're taking the approach we're taking. And answer questions, or we can get into the other aspect of it if you'd like.
Education.
Yeah, well, education is a big part of it. That was one of the key recommendations from the AIB. University of Vermont has programs in place now to educate farmers about neonicotinoid treated seeds and best practices for them. In fact, I think in 2 weeks they have a series of webinars, including the use of the neonicotinoid treated seeds. So that's.
But when you do this education and outreach, other than posting it on a website somewhere, what does that outreach look like to the farmers?
Well,
I'm sure they're aware that this education is available.
Well,
And that these best management practices.
farmer grower meetings, the University of Vermont puts on a couple of different, in-person trainings, over the year. They have, I'm not gonna accurately report the titles of them, but they are in-person training where farmers come to the meeting. We also attend, the grower meetings for the, water coalitions, Champlain Valley Farmers Coalition and the Connecticut River Water Quality Association. We attend those meetings. We're asked to speak. I've got speaking engagements coming up with the Tree Fruit Growers Association, and some of our staff will be at the Vegetable Growers Association meeting next week. So yeah, we are in front of the farmers with this information.
Are you done with your presentation?
Unless you have questions, yes, sir.
Anything else?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Again, Steve Collier. I want to hand out the statute and the act that started the BMPs. There's been a lot of talk about concern about H706, which banned some uses of neonicotinoids in 2024. The BMPs have nothing to do with H706. The only thing that H706 did was it expanded the BMPs from treated articles alone to treated articles and seeds. So I just wanted to see the original act that created the BMPs and then the language that exists now, because I think all of this comes back pretty clearly to the language itself. There's the original act. Here's the law as it stands. So I'm just handing out Act 145 from 2022 and Chapter 87 of the pesticide statute. Nothing about the use of the term BMPs, nor the factors that we're supposed to consider when developing BMPs changed in 2024 when H706 was passed. But there's been a lot of argument that somehow the BMPs changed because of that law, and the only thing that changed was they had to also include pesticide instead of just treated article. Just treated line. Sorry. So if you could look at Act 145, please, with me, and you get out my copy. All the language it's very limited language, but it's all right here. And if you look at page, sorry. It is page. So if you'd start on page 2, you'll see under 1105A, it's about midway through the page. This is our rulemaking authority that was adopted in that the legislature enacted back in 2015, I believe it was, that Mr. O'Grady talked about last week. And this is how our rulemaking authority is described. A couple of key things. If you look at subsection A, it says, the secretary, upon recommendation of the AIB, may adopt by rule. And then if you look through the list of things that we may do, in the first sentence, there's best management practices, standards, procedures, and requirements. In every other subsection of our rulemaking authority, you'll see that the first word in every section is requirements. Now, the reason this is interesting is that this rulemaking authority pre-existed the adoption of Act 145, but if you look at A1, best management practices was appended by BMPs. You see where BMPs is added there? That's key because that shows that there was an intentional choice to use BMPs. When you go to the next page, on page 3, you'll see that under at the bottom of the page, under subsection C1, it says under subsection A, the Secretary of Agriculture and Markets, after consultation with the AIB, shall adopt by rule BMPs. That is the language that's still in effect today that we're required to do. Now, when you looked at the legislature had choices, it could have chosen standards, procedures, or requirements, or BMPs, and it chose requirements. It chose BMPs, it's pretty clear that was an intentional choice. BMPs and requirements do not and cannot mean the same thing. If they meant the same thing, BMPs wouldn't be used. It would be an irrelevant, meaningless term if BMPs and requirements said the same thing. They don't. So I think if you then look at the statute that's in place right now under Chapter 87 that we wrote the rules, I think it's on the key language for all of this discussion is only in 1105A. I gave you the whole chapter so that you have it if you want to look through and see if there's anything, any other language that modifies anything about this, but there isn't. So if you look at, again, if you look at subsection C1, this is the language that we were required to do. It doesn't, I'm sorry, this isn't numbered by page, but it's subsection 1105A, treated articles, powers of the secretary. And C1 is the language that we were directed to do. The same language that was passed back in 2023. And it says the Secretary of Agency of Agriculture, after consultation with the AIB, shall adopt by rule BMPs. Same language, it's BMPs, it's not requirements. And then if you look at what we're supposed to do in developing those rules, you look down to subsection 2 and it says in developing rules with the AIB, the secretary shall address, and it's got that list of factors. Now, first of all, the word address does not mean impose, it means discuss, it means talk about. But if you look at the factors that are there, they're exact same factors that were enacted in Act 145. Nothing changed when the ban was passed in 2024. So when we were asked to develop BMPs by rule, it was to discuss these factors with the AIB and then to come back to the legislature with the draft rule. There's nothing about the ban that impacts this at all. So this argument that somehow when the ban was enacted, we were supposed to address BMPs to figure out how to implement the ban, it's just not there. It's not in the language. I don't even, it's out of thin air from my perspective. It's a policy argument. It's not a legal argument. But looking at the term best management practices, as Mr. O'Grady explained last week, unless it's defined as required, it's voluntary. There's no language anywhere in the statutory framework that defines best management practices as mandatory. You can look at the definitions under 1101, it's not defined. So when it's not defined, we look at the plain meaning of the language. There's nothing about best management practice that is equivalent to mandatory legal requirement. I mean, just look at the words themselves, best. Best is an aspirational term that suggests the highest levels of conduct. It is not a term that in any context equates to mandatory enforceable legal requirement. And I know that's true because if I had to give the best legal advice, I'd be out of a job. It's something we aspire to do. It's not something that we by law require people to do, unless the legislature explicitly states that, and it wasn't stated. Also, management practices. There's nothing about the term management practices that equates to mandatory legal requirements. Those are not the terms we use when we talk about mandatory legal requirements. Instead, we talk about requirements, which is everywhere else in the statute. So this idea that BMPs somehow by desire, I guess, that somehow BMPs equal mandatory legal requirements, it's just not grounded in the statute. So that's, I know we don't have a lot of time, so I don't want to go too long, but basically BMPs can't be mandatory legal requirements unless you tell us they are. But that's only a piece of it, because if you look at Act 145, the legislature specifically directed us to develop the BMPs by rule and then to share them with the legislature and to wait 90 days before we filed with Lcar. The only reason to Lcar. The only reason to do that is so that we can have a discussion with the legislature about the BMPs, which is a perfectly legitimate thing to do. We have wonderful relationships with our agricultural committees. We don't always agree. We sometimes disagree on things, but we communicate with them regularly. They ask us questions. We ask them questions. It's a wonderful relationship. I couldn't ask for a better relationship with those two committees that we work regularly with. And when we disagree, that's fine. We communicate about it. When we came back to the legislature and proposed these rules, first in 2024, before the ban, They were presented as voluntary management practices. We presented them in both the House Agriculture Food Resiliency Committee and also in the Senate Agriculture Committee in 2024, before the ban was enacted. No one asked us to change these. No one said, well, wait a second, these are supposed to be requirements. We explained our lengthy conversations with the AIB, who are the experts, supposed to be the experts that we're soliciting input from. We explained how we addressed each one of the enumerated factors. We talked to the legislature. No one said you got it wrong. What they did do, what we all did, was you did enact the ban. It's perfectly fine. And the ban also was extended to neonicotinoid pesticides. So instead of just going forward with the rule as it was originally drafted, we had to come back to the legislature to make it clear that the BMPs were expanded to also cover pesticides. So yet again, in 2025, we file our annual report with the legislature and talk about our work with the AIB. We go to the committees and we talk about the rules. The rules are presented as voluntary. Again, no one said, you got it wrong. This is not the way it's supposed to be. Yeah,
I want to move this along.
sure.
I think we get the sense of the argument and what you're saying. I want to make sure that everyone else gets a chance to give their testimony, okay? I will mention at this point, both Senate Agriculture and House Agriculture have sent letters to this committee. In the case of Senate Agriculture, and we're talking about legislative intent here and that issue. I know there's some statutory issues that can get resolved. I think we can put that aside for now. But there is a question about legislative intent. I appreciate your argument. Senate Agriculture said it does meet legislative intent. House Agriculture says that this does not meet legislative intent. So we have two different committees, two different perspectives, and committee members, you have copies of those. If committee members have quick questions for these two before we get to other folks, because I want to make sure that we do get everybody, because we're not making a decision today.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question about that? I didn't realize, I talked to Chair Durfee about this and that doesn't align with, I'm not questioning what.
I will send you a copy.
I am wondering if he said that the committee ever raised any concerns about the rule, because in my discussions with him, he said that he wasn't looking for that and did not seem to believe that he had.
You can look at a copy of what he sent me.
Okay.
Okay. Questions right now?
I'll try to do a quick.
Go ahead.
A couple more that'll be deeper, but I won't go into that. But just so the agency's interpretation of the language of the statute here is that the BMPs would not be required and thus enforceable. Is that correct? That's the agency's legal interpretation of the statutory intent.
Correct.
Thank you.
Let's get to the other folks and then we'll go from there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jared Carpenter with the Water Protection, is a Water Protection Advocate with the Lake Champlain Committee. But I think you're representing a few other folks also.
And I'm going to skip the chair with the hat on, just use the traditional one. So yes, good morning all. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jared Carpenter. I'm with the Lake Champlain Committee. I am here on behalf of that group and also representing a number of other organizations. We filed comments on January 5th to Lcar on behalf of the Lake Champlain Committee, Vermont Public Interest Research Group, Audubon, Vermont Conservation Law Foundation, the Natural Resources Defense Council, the Sierra Club, Vermont Conservation Voters, and Vermont Natural Resources Council. Our organizations are asking the committee to object to the final rule as it's contrary to the intent of the legislature under 3 VSA 842 B2. I'll be brief in the interest of time, but still try to hit my marks. So stepping back, the intent of this bill, the purpose of this bill is pollinator protection. Our argument is that without the BMPs being mandatory in place, you lose that safety net when exemptions are put in place and before the seed ban goes into effect. So if you recall from Ledge Council last week, The bill takes two avenues. July 1st, 2025, so several months ago, application of neonics was banned. On July 1st of 2029, the use of neonic treated seeds becomes banned. The BMPs, and I'll get to the statute as well that Steve talked about. The BMPs were put in place to offer a level of protection for pollinators before the seed ban goes into effect in 2029, and if an exemption is granted for the use of either the application of spraying of pollinators or after 2029, when an exemption is granted for the use of neonic treated seeds. That's the purpose of the BMPs, is to offer as a safety net. If the BMPs are voluntary and they're not in place, it's like this legislative body never passed a bill to protect pollinators. It's business as usual. And as a reminder of the vote count, in 2024, the initial vote out of the House was 112 to 29, and the Senate was 25 to 2. There was a veto, and the veto override vote was by the House 114 to 31, and the Senate 20 to 9. So there is certainly the intent from this body to protect pollinators, and without mandatory BMPs, you lose that. In getting to the statute, the agency talked an awful lot about Section A, and then referenced C1, but a full reading of the language, it says, the Secretary, after consultation with the Agricultural Innovation Board, shall adopt by rule BMPs for use in the state of A, neonic treated article seeds when used prior to January 1st. Well, this is 2031, has since been changed to 2029. B, neonic treated article seeds when the Secretary issues a written exemption. Neonic pesticides when the Secretary issues a written exemption. And under D, the agricultural use after July 1st, 2025 of neonic pesticides, the use of which is not otherwise prohibited by law. So there are some cases where you can use neonics that aren't covered by this. So my reading, and I think a common sense reading of shall adopt by rule BMPs for use in the state of means that these BMPs are going to be used, meaning they're mandatory, not they're voluntary and discretionary. So that's our argument why the rule misses the legislative intent of Act 182, which was passed in 2024. In an interest of time, I'll stop, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jared. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Robert Wright. Okay. And I do want to mention to presenters, and we want to keep comments to probably, I'm going to say 2 to 3 minutes so that we can get everyone in. Okay, so Robert Wright.
Good morning. I'm actually Sylvia Knight is the person.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for this time to speak. You already have my formal revised comments on this rule. Act 182 was passed to curtail and ultimately phase out the use of neonicotinoid pesticides and neonicotinoid treated seeds by 2030 in Vermont in order to protect pollinators necessary for the web of life in Vermont. The best management practices as written by the Agricultural Innovation Board will not fulfill this law. In fact, they will undermine the law. I want to highlight several concepts from my revised comments. The language, the word shall must replace the should language throughout the document. Otherwise, there's no enforceability or accountability. And if there's no accountability, we don't get protection of pollinators. 2, aerial spraying. Allowing any aerial spraying is counter to the advice provided by pollinator experts in October 2024 and endangers many pollinators and beneficial insects. 3, the BMPs will fail to protect water and public health by allowing treatment of areas within important buffer areas recommended by pollinator experts to protect water resources. In section 4 of my revised comments, please see evidence of serious neonic contamination of waters of the state, which indicates problems with current use of these pesticides. In short, pollinator protection is about our relationship with the community of life. Pollinator protection is now in your hands. You are our court of last resort. Please uphold the law passed by the legislature, protect pollinators, and reject the BMPs as presented. Thank you for this time. That's all
Thank
I
you,
have
Sylvia.
to say.
Questions for Sylvia? Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Representative Nelson, Richard Nelson. I believe you're here as a farmer.
I am here as a dairyman. Yes, I am. Good morning. Richard Nelson for the record. Dairy farmer up in Derby, Vermont, 2,700 acres. And I guess I'm here kind of representing 72,000 acres of corn planted in the state of Vermont. That coupled with the corn in New York brings us just about 1.1% of the corn acres grown in the United States. It's a fallacy to think that the big four seed companies, where we get our best genetics to grow our crop to feed our cows, is going to bend over backwards to produce seed, the seed that we require, the genetics that we need to be competitive in commerce. They're going to produce it for 1.1% of the nation. So last year, the drought impacted dairymen in the state of Vermont, or agriculture in the state of Vermont, to the tune of $15.9 million. We fight an uphill battle every day. Class 3 price for milk right now is headed for $15 a hundredweight. That's back to 1990 prices with 2025 expenses. We used to be able to buy a 300 horse tractor back in the 90s for around $100,000, $80,000 to $100,000. They're now $400,000 and up. So we face a lot of challenges to bring a $5.4 billion industry to the state of Vermont. Doug Van Hoyk is the toxicologist for the Board of Pesticide Control over in the state of Maine. His research shows that in the United States, where neonicotinoids are used, it's 0.04 of a pound per square mile in treated articles on seed, because each seed is coded and it's only where the seed is. We take seriously our best management practices. We take seriously our RAPs in this industry. We have setbacks from water when we're planting corn. We will be changing, along with these BMPs, we'll be changing our lubricant we use in our planters for the seed flow. That will be a great way of reducing dust. Other than that, seed costs $120 to $150 per acre. We don't spill a lot because it's very expensive. That's about what I got to say. We take these BMPs seriously. Any questions?
Thank you. Committee members?
Actually, I do. I'm not on the agricultural committee, but
heard this issue percolate. I'm just wondering if you include the Canadian market, what share of seed with New York, Vermont, then what are we looking at?
So the Canadian market, the American seed dealers are not really selling corn to Quebec anymore because they were cheating the system and it was causing a lot of flack. And so they just said, well, we're going to close that market down. So I'm not really sure what they're using. And it's a different style of farming up there. They have quota and they have vast acreage and they just do things different than we do. And I really pride myself that our corn way out surpasses theirs for productivity.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Representative Cole, Esme Cole.
Good morning, committee. For the record, my name is Esme Cole, and I'm a representative from Hartford who served on the Committee on Agriculture, Food Resiliency, and Forestry during the deliberations, crafting, and eventual passage of Act 182. The impetus for this policy is first conveyed in the extensive list of findings on the first 3 pages of the bill. Our committee collected testimony from a diverse set of witnesses whose research and agricultural expertise illustrated the consequences of neonicotinoid use at current rates. As a committee, we were not comfortable with these consequences. Policy intervention would be necessary to prevent further colony loss, to strengthen immunity from the parasitic varroa mite, and to increase population diversity to support Vermont's ecological landscape and food system. It would not have been realistic for us to assume that these goals would be achieved through optional suggestions for best management practices. This is why the committee was intentional in choosing the following language on page 11 of the bill as passed. AAFM shall adopt by rule best management practices for use in the state. Instead of shall, we could have said should. Instead of rule, we could have said something to the tune of suggestion. Doing the bill walkthrough with legislative counsel, there was no reason for our committee to flag this language because it appeared to be the strongest possible. I personally do not recall the agency clarifying that these BMPs would not be enforced despite our inclusion of the language shall. In the original version of the bill as introduced, the best management practices were going to be repealed when the prohibition of treated seeds began in 2029. As a committee, we made the policy choice to keep those BMPs in place for applicators who were granted exemptions and used neonicotinoids after the prohibition. If these practices were merely suggestions, it would have been hard to justify the importance of creating a new draft of the bill to keep them. I hope these points are helpful in conveying our legislative intent, and thank you for taking the time to consider my testimony.
Thank you. Questions for the representative?
Just out of curiosity, so we had the Department of Agriculture kind of go through the bill as drafted. And I'm wondering, because typically the bills come through the House, come to the Senate. In this case, was that the case that you had the bill first, they had the bill second? Did they alter the language? Or is it the same language that you were in specifically page 2, the section 1105A about may adopt BMPs? I'm just curious if there's any history there.
Sure. I'd have to look back, but I know what happened in my committee and I know our intention there. So, and it looks like as passed, the Senate, whether or not they changed it, they decided to keep this very same language. So at the end of the day, bill has passed and it happens to align in this case with our original intent on the House side as well. So both things seem to be serving the same intent. Thank you.
Other committee members? Okay, so we heard from all the witnesses and I appreciate that. We're at time. We all have other committees and things to do. We will have this first on the agenda next week. We have an extension from you, right, Steve?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate everyone's testimony and their willingness to face discussion. So So next week we'll have this. We're gonna get to the not safe, we'll have to put that next week. And we'll decide what to do about the fire. Any other questions, comments from committee members? Okay.